crack on,
Okay.
folks.
Okay, we'll kick off. So we're going to try and keep it reasonably informal. We have some slides prepped more as talking points. So we'll just do a quick intro first. Matthew, you're first, the man with all the badges. Want to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, I'm Matthew Brown. I'm a Microsoft MVP in Azure and security. I'm an IT professional in Ireland who focused on core infrastructure, and I work for Context Security at the moment as a cyber analyst. So that's me.
And myself, Alan Canan. So I'm an Azure MVP, Microsoft Certified Trainer. I probably only started my certification journey in the last 4 years or so. So I've been using Azure since 2015, but I decided I should probably have some of these certificates, seeing as it's almost exclusively what I do. And I've been, I suppose, progressively working through the exams that I felt kind of most relevant to my role. So I'll talk about my journey. I work for a distributor, CSP indirect provider in Dublin here. So predominantly I work day to day with Microsoft partners. So I'd have a lot of exposure to partner programs and helping other partners to get their certifications, which is a requirement now for various accreditations for Microsoft partners. So I'll talk a little bit about that aspect of things later on. For myself, I said, 20 years in IT at this stage, predominantly infrastructure focused, worked for various MSPs over the years, but now pretty much just working with Azure these days. And my details on the screen if you want to reach out. So Jen, this is just some things I wanted to cover today, or myself and Matthew felt we'd talk about, is talk a bit about the Microsoft exams themselves, the different categories they fit into and different levels of certifications that come with it. Talk about the value of certifications for individuals, and then the value for Microsoft partners, talking about why they're important for your employers if they're Microsoft partners. Discuss the exam format and scheduling options you have there, so going to exam centers or proctored exams, taking them from home. Cover the renewal process that changed a few years ago, so it's much simpler nowadays for renewing your exams. And then we're just going to cover some preparation, some tips from ourselves on how to actually prepare for those exams. And myself and Matthew both picked our kind of top 3 tips for exam preparation. And then at the end, we'll do some Q&A. But I'd say, given the number of people here, we might just have some chat throughout the session and try and do Q&A throughout. So if anyone does have anything they want to talk about at the relevant point, please just feel free to ask. We can take some questions at the end. Kicking off, don't expect anyone to read this slide. This is basically just an overview. I'm not even sure if this includes all of the current cloud exams, but as you can see, they do cover different categories. So Azure has a huge amount of exams at this stage and more being added all the time. But if your interest is more in the likes of Dynamics 365, there's a huge set of exams there, same with Microsoft 365, the Power Platform, and now Security, Compliance and Identity has its own category of exams, the SC series. And these are broken down into, I suppose, 3 sections of exams: the fundamentals, the role-based exams, which is associate level. Then you go on to expert level exams, and then there are even specialty exams. So for ones that don't really fit into their own categories, there are now specialty exam sections. I'm going to let Matthew start with this slide. This slide is quite an interesting one that explains the kind of focus areas that you might cover for the various different Azure exams.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. So I suppose this poster is actually quite good in terms of it gives you kind of a triangle view of what Microsoft have to offer. If we look at the left-hand side of it, most of Microsoft certification, you'll see some of their top ones like the Azure Admin, Security Engineer, Network, Server Hybrid. They are all kind of core infrastructure focused. You have a bit of SAP in there as well if you want to look at specialty level certification. And then, of course, if you want to kind of dive deep into data analytics, you have your database and your data scientist. I suppose for me, when I was going through this path, the administrator and the security and the server hybrid were my 3 main areas of focus as their core infrastructure. So kind of if you had previously done your MCSA or MCSE, those are the kind of certification you're going to be looking at if you want to kind of move that over to the cloud. Windows Server Hybrid being for me was one of the most intense exams. It kind of covered nearly every area that you would have done on-prem with Hyper-V and then bringing it over into Azure. So if I was to give my 2 cents, top one there would definitely be your server hybrid and your Azure administrator if you're getting started at an associate level. And I'll just hand it back to Alan.
Yeah, I guess, and certainly from a lot of the partners I would speak to, most focus is on infrastructure, certainly here in the Irish market. So we would see the vast majority of people with an aim to get the Azure Administrator Associate exams. That's the AZ-104, and that is one of the prerequisite requirements for any of the Azure partner accreditations, and that's associate level. And it is a prerequisite exam to work your way up to the Azure Solution Architect Expert exam, which again is another prerequisite for any of the partner accreditations. And those would be by far the more popular routes. A lot of people do skip the fundamentals. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Fundamentals is an optional exam. You don't need it as a prerequisite for any others. So a lot of people just skip over that. But I found I actually took that one much later. And the reason I took it is because I teach Azure Fundamentals as a course as part of my day job. So I said, well, I should really have this exam if I'm teaching the materials. But I actually learned a few things from those materials that may not be quite so technical or so in-depth technically, but I did pick up a few nuggets of information from doing that. So it is actually good to take that part. What I found in more recent years is getting away from infrastructure, or of course moving into worlds of like DevOps nowadays and working with deploying things like infrastructure as code. So I did take the Azure DevOps Engineer Expert exam. And it was more as a stretch for me because it was a bit outside my comfort zone, not something I was used to. And that was by far the most difficult exam I took because most of the material was new to me. I'm not a developer, don't have really a history in that or a background in that. So there was a steep learning curve there for me, but it was a useful journey to get up to that certification and learn to be an Azure DevOps developer. And then some of the data areas, I've only dipped my toe in that. I've done the Azure Data Platform fundamentals, but again, I did find I learned quite a lot from just getting the fundamentals level. So that's why we might talk about the value fundamentals and why this is often overlooked. But I think, Matthew, you've done most, if not all, of these, and I know you have a affinity for these. You really appreciate the value of this.
So I having spent the last 10 years really kind of training in general people in IT. The last 5 years have been kind of focused on looking at fundamentals, and I'll say it again and again, and any kind of IT professional experienced enough with their 10 plus years will say it. Fundamentals, without them, you're not going to get very far in an IT career. Whether it's your data fundamentals, your networking fundamentals, your security basics, even. These are all things that you're going to come across in a career in IT, whether it's DevOps, DevSecOps, Azure administration, database, SQL, that kind of stuff. The most popular certification and reasons for doing your fundamentals are kind of just to get a good command of the language, get an understanding of what it's like to create a resource group, what it's like to build, network peering and that kind of stuff. The top fundamentals exams I've seen people do are your Azure, your security compliance if you want to look at security, and then of course your 365, which leads you on to more associate level exams, and then expert in enterprise administrator expert. So they're the three top areas. Again, you do your fundamentals to build a foundation. You want to use those fundamentals as a building block to your associate exams and then your expert. And I will say that even though you might have sat the fundamentals, you might have learned a lot, you're going to constantly be going back to that as you progress your career. It's not just, oh, I've done my fundamentals, I've passed that exam, yay, let's go on to the next one. It's, I've done it, I need to practice it, I need to implement this on a site, and then it's only from that experience you start getting comfortable with Azure. So yeah, fundamentals, huge part of your learning curve. Good confidence in them. once you start, you'll kind of get more heavily involved with designing architecture, implementing network solutions, putting together SQL databases with it inside an Azure, all the different things that you're going to be doing for a business. So yeah, it's just, look, strive to learn the vocabulary and features and get the basics right in your chosen technology.
Another point about the fundamentals, it's the only set of exams that does not require renewal. These are perpetual exams. So if you get a fundamentals certificate, you get to keep that basically. You do not have to renew that every year. So it is nice to be able to build up that base level knowledge on the fundamentals levels. And so you don't need to repeat those every year like you do with the other exams. We thought we'd mention the specialty exams. These are fairly new. So rather than just talking about the 2-star exams being the associate levels, which there are many of, we started to see these specialty exams appear more recently. And these probably don't really fit into any other categories. So one we might call out here is the Azure Virtual Desktop Specialty Exam. So because this doesn't really fit into any of the associate levels, there is a special designation for this and for other ones. So it is a way to distinguish your skills in a particular service. I don't know if you want to mention anything here, Matthew.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there. I haven't myself and Alan have worked kind of together over the years in separate companies, and we're seeing a lot of AVD solutions being put out there to the market. So like getting your AVD certification is actually really important. You need, you learn how to build host pools, you learn what DAGs are, you learn how to manage sessions, build the architecture out right, elasticate it, move it along, all the different things you're going to be doing as part of an AVD setup for clients. So like the AVD certification is really valuable. And I would say to anyone, getting started with AVD, open up your Azure account, get your free $150 credit and start setting that up and practice. So yeah, just knowing myself and Alan have been doing that for years with clients now, it's really worth getting involved in that side of things, especially from a specialty point of view. That's all I'd say on that.
Yeah, just see Richard in the chat there. Hi, Richard. Mentioned I want to see an AKS specialist cert. I'm amazed there isn't one already.
Yeah,
I'm sure
I mean,
it must be on
craziness. Or at the very least, if you want to cover a few more topics than just solely AKS, let's get a cloud native specialist exam going. Because you could cover a bit more than just Richard's favorite topic.
Yeah. I actually.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was expecting an AKS one on its own. I'm just amazed there isn't one there, given the amount of influence it seems to have. Yeah, but cloud native would be an interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can cover a lot. I mean, because cloud native doesn't just cover AKS and Kubernetes, but it's how you deploy and the ways and the different technologies you can use. But I'm curious, has anybody actually sat the AZ720 exam?
I did it in data. It was a toughie. I just thought I'd do it. It's very, as you know, Carl, it's very network focused. It's about connectivity. But it was pretty tough there. A lot harder than I thought.
I sat the 700 in beta, and I thought it was tough enough for an Azure networking exam. But I've sat some Cisco exams, Yeah. But yeah, I find that Azure networking exams miss a lot of routing fundamentals and stuff that someone who doesn't have a networking background won't have.
And I agree with you, Carl, on that. Your routing, your peering, your subnetting, all those items are definitely, they're not covered in
not enough.
In enough, exactly, in enough bandwidth. It's kind of, we'll ask you a question and that'll be it. But it should be going into more detail of how you actually set that up and get that working.
Yeah, I was curious. I was curious about the 720 now. Just I might go and set it after I get through my security exams this year. And just to answer Richard Hooper in the chat, people care about BGP. Without BGP, there is no internet. So get back in your box.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think just another one worth mentioning there before we forget though is the certified exchange specialty, because that's kind of coming back with a bang. I remember it in beta, and it was a really tough exam, even if
My
you
goodness, I
prereq
didn't even know that
office.
existed.
Yeah.
Although I've tried to stay as far away from Exchange for several years now, so
Yeah. Okay. So those are the specialties. Yeah, I think we'll see a lot more of them appear over the coming years for individual services. And then obviously we have to talk about the expert ones. I mean, these are I suppose, the definitive ones that you want to show off to people and say, look, I have my expert level badges, and these would have prerequisite exams. So you would normally have to do at least 2 exams anyway to work your way up to expert level. And again, the one most people tend to go for here is the Azure Solutions Architect Expert. DevOps Engineer, another one, again, very useful, especially if you are a developer or if you're working with DevOps at all. That's a goal there. And then Cybersecurity Architect Expert is a more recent one. So that's again part of that SC, the security series we mentioned, and this is really, I suppose, the pinnacle of that security group series. So, well, you don't need to pass all the other security series exams before you take this one. They would be helpful because this obviously covers off pretty much all of the security products in one place. I know myself and Matthew have sat this one recently,
and I think it's a highly underestimated exam. I would say to people studying it, going, and I know you're going to get different advice from people. Microsoft are retiring the AZ500. Go do it before you take your SC exam.
MS 500, no?
MS 500. Apologies, Carol. You're right.
I was about to have a panic attack.
Sorry. Go take your MS 500 if you're going to take the SC 100 because it really covers the depth and breadth that the other SC exams are missing a bit of. So just go do it before it retires, even just to get a bit of experience with that that knowledge base and understanding it. So yeah.
Yeah, I found the same. I found the SC100 covers basically all the security services across Azure and Microsoft 365. So if you know all the products quite well and what they do, you don't have to be able to deploy them all or know them inside out. But if you know them all reasonably well, that's probably enough to pass it. But that really comes with experience. It's been using those products for a long time and being reasonably familiar with them all. So there's quite a lot of knowledge required there just to cover all those off. But like I say, I didn't find the exam went into a huge amount of depth in any one service, but it's covering the breadth of all the different services. And of course, the last one there is the Microsoft 365 expert, which I think that's changing or rebranding as well. I think, isn't it? Yeah.
That's coming out with one exam in May, or I think it's May. They're changing it to just one prereq.
Yeah. So similar to the Azure one, the 305, that used to be 2 exams, of course. There was a lot of kind of crossover, so they amalgamated that into one. So that's the expert level. Really, just we're not going to cover this. This is just to talk about the value of certifications, but really, again, talk about the overall value. Why is it valuable for an individual to get certified? So Matthew, you want to really talk about these next few slides here?
Yeah, sure, perfect. So I suppose I recently did a paper on this, and it was so interesting to read and understand what people were thinking of the last kind of 2 years. So Pearson VUE did a very detailed report on why people were looking to get certification, and funny enough, the highest scoring was 73% for upskilling. Just genuine interest, like a lot of us here on the call. You have an interest to upskill, you want to learn more about an area, and that's what people did. Some of it was obviously for changing jobs or careers or getting promoted or moving to a different area in the IT industry. A lot of people think, if I get the certification, will I get that raise? Or if I do it, will I get a possible job advancement, career advancement? Will I get that new job if I apply with this certification? They're all questions that go through people's heads. But I suppose something that someone said to me recently was, what the certification does is it lets you to be able to speak and understand the language better. And then it's about putting that into practice in your career. So again, people undertake it for new job, promotion, salary, or new skills. So they're just some of the reasons people do certification. Pearson VUE have a detailed report on this, and I would always recommend people go check it out if they're looking for the latest information on skilling. So yeah, I suppose personal benefits, I just put it in there. Yeah, I might just get you to go back there, Alan. So personal benefits, why people do certifications for themselves with no monetary gain. It's confidence, it's to succeed better, it's more respect from the people you work with, it's better job satisfaction, and it's going to lead to obviously more independence on the job. So they're just some of the facts and figures that were published about why people might personally do certification, more for self-esteem and educational purposes, really. So the average return on investment for employers on the next slide was 10,000 per certified employee. So globally, where Pearson VUE showed all the different areas, knowledge, professional updates, promotions required for your job. A lot of employers are now requiring that they hire certified Microsoft professionals. It gives them some sort of insurance that, okay, this person is certified in, Azure, Office, Exchange. We know they have that certification and they have the experience in it. So look, they're going to add value to our company, obviously. So that's the kind of facts and figures they were looking at, the overall metrics behind upskilling. So yeah.
I see a few questions in the chat, and I'm going to come to those in a second, because I'm going to just do a couple of slides on why it might be beneficial for your employer to have these certifications through you as the individual. So although the certifications belong to you, the individual, you're the one who's certified, you can associate them with your organization. So if your organization is a Microsoft partner, you can basically affiliate your certifications to that partner. So the Microsoft Partner Program was changed recently. So we've probably all seen Microsoft Silver and Gold partners. It's been around for many, many years. And I think there was about 18 different categories of Silver and Gold partners. And it was fairly straightforward in terms of how you qualify for those programs. You usually hit a certain sales target in terms of, let's say it was selling Microsoft 365 products, licenses, or if it was an Azure, that was the cloud platform competency, you had to sell a certain amount of Azure consumption over the course of a year. And on top of that, for the Silver exam, you needed just one person certified with the AZ 104, and for the Gold, you just needed 2 people certified. So it was relatively easy to achieve that. So Microsoft have changed that program. The Gold and Silver partner program basically no longer exists. You can't call yourself a Gold or Silver partner anymore. So they've replaced those with these 7 competencies. And as you can see, 3 of them actually apply to Azure. So there's an Azure infrastructure one, an Azure digital and app innovation, and a data and AI one. And you've got one for business applications, so like Dynamics and Power Apps. You've got Modern Work, which is your Microsoft 365, and then a dedicated one for security. The last badge here, basically you get that. That's a 7th badge that you get if you collect them all, so to speak. So if you get all 6 badges, you get this bonus 7th badge. And what is the point of getting these? What's the benefit to employer? It's obviously recognition. So again, in the past, you would have seen many companies say we're Microsoft Gold partner. Now you have these badges to show that you're accredited. You do get some benefits. So the organization themselves does get some internal use subscriptions. So that's like your Microsoft 365 subscriptions. The Microsoft increased the numbers you get there. So in the past, I can't remember what it was. You used to get something like, I can't remember, was it 250 licenses if you're Gold certified. I think they've increased that now. You do also get bulk credits for internal use. So you get basically a sponsorship as your subscription for your organization that you can use for your own production workloads for internal use. And that's, again, depending on which badge you get. And then possibly the most important one is you can earn rebates on your customer sales. So if you're an Azure transacting partner, for every euro, for every pound, for every dollar you spend, you get a percentage back on rebates. So the kickback you get from Microsoft earning through your Azure consumption or through your sales of Microsoft 365 seat-based licenses, for example. So there are benefits to the employer. And as I mentioned, it is important for the employer to have certified individuals. So as I said, you assign your certifications to your organization. So this is how the program works now. It's a lot more complex than it used to be, and it's more of a holistic approach, that it's not just based on having a few certs and hitting a monetary target. They now base it on performance, skilling, and customer success. So you earn a certain amount of points for each category, and you have to hit a minimum of 70 points overall to get that accreditation. But importantly, you have to have at least 1 point in every single category. So you can't just hit the monetary targets and not have anyone certified. You have to have points for every single category here. And as you'll see from the likes of the Azure one, the Azure infrastructure one, you need to have people with intermediate level certs and advanced certificates. So I've just taken a snippet of what the requirements are for the Azure infrastructure accreditation. So as you can see, there are 2 individuals need to be certified with the admin associate. So that's the AZ 104. That's the prerequisite required. You need 2 people with that, but you also need to, in order to earn points in the intermediate certificate category, you need to have at least 1 individual with one of these. And these are some associates. So there's the network engineer, or the Azure Stack Hub operator, or the Windows Server hybrid admin associate. So not only do you need the AZ 104, you'll need to have 1 of these to qualify for any points in that category. And because you have to have points in every category, that also means the advanced certs, you need points there as well. So you need this and this. But for this one, you will need 2 people with the Azure Solutions Architect, that's the AZ 305, and you'll need a specialty. So this is why specialty exams are important. You would need to have at least 1 person certified in either the Azure Virtual Desktop specialty or the Azure for SAP workload specialty. Yeah. As you can see, there's 2 people with this exam and 1 of these, and 2 people with this exam and 1 of these. So that's a lot more of an ask from a skilling perspective than in the past.
And I suppose a thing to add to that is you see a lot of companies panicking now. So October of 22 was the last year you could extend your gold partnership with the existing benefits. So from this year onwards, a lot of companies are looking to get individuals who either have these qualifications already or who are willing to do a huge amount of upskilling to get them. But I would just point out, and Alan will say it again, so just remember, it's if your employer wants you to do this, they should be willing to support that and pay for it. While the certs belong to you, if you stay or leave with the employer, they should still be trying to encompass that encouragement of go get certified, go learn about a new area, help us with our development and our journey to MSP status with Microsoft. You know, there's not going to be a lot of companies in Ireland out there that will now have those designations because they're more complex and there's more work involved. So just remember, you're 1 person. There should be a team of people trying to do this and get that support from your employer. If you don't ask the question, you won't get the desired answer. So, you know, ask, get the support you need, and enjoy the journey, obviously.
There is something I've spotted recently in the industry through recruiters. So I've been offered secondary work from a number of recruiters. If I will get monthly benefit from them if I link my certification profile to their companies or the people they're representing as partner.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
Naughty.
It's becoming more and more of a common theme. So you are a paid employee for them on a secondary based role, but actually delivery of work would be minimal as long as they're stipulating you've got to link your certs. And I've had in the last probably 3 months about 7 or 8 people, individual separate organizations, come forward with that.
That's worrying.
Yeah. Wow, yeah.
That's gonna cause a problem in the industry.
Yeah.
That's what
I could see why, because it's again, you could easily hit all these other targets, these performance and customer success, customer ads, easily enough, but the skilling could be the one you're missing. And if you have those people and they decide to move on to another organization, they walk out the door, they go with the individual. Now, yes, you have to disassociate those from the organization. But when you take up your new employment, they probably are going to look for those straight away. So they do transfer, and they can only be assigned to one organization. So it is becoming more important.
The other thing I've noticed, because I look after some of the partner stuff at the company I work for, and actually previously with like gold partnership, when it was gold partnership, your certs would stay there, where they'd stay there for the renewal up until the renewal point. What I've noticed with this is if the employee goes and disassociates, those certs go literally within no time at all now.
It's instant.
There's no delay.
That's right. It's about five days for an employee to get linked up with a company, and it takes less than 12 hours for that employee, if they leave the company, to have everything disassociated with them, with the employer. So it's very fast, the change process. Okay, so next one.
Beyond these, there are advanced specializations. So if you want to specialize in doing like server migrations or something like that, or if there's an Azure Virtual Desktop specialty, for example, you can go for that. It requires additional certification, various revenue targets, and you have to do an audit. And then beyond that, again, is Azure Expert MSPs. That's really the top tier, where there's a lot of requirements. Like I think you need 15 certified individuals, for example. So that would be the very top level, the Azure Expert MSP. But this is really the entry level, just getting any kind of a partner badge accreditation at all, is this requirement here. But yes, it'll be interesting to see how many partners in Ireland, especially, can actually achieve this, because we're a much smaller market here. There's a lot of MSPs who just won't have the numbers or the staff numbers even to hit these targets. So I think it'll be a struggle. And these are global numbers. As far as I know, I think Microsoft have been talking about maybe having different markets for different countries. But as far as I know, at the moment, this is still the global criteria. So it doesn't matter if you're based Ireland, UK, USA. I think the criteria is the same at the moment, but I believe they are considering reviewing that. Should be interesting. Okay, let's talk about exam formats. I don't know if anyone here, I think Alan maybe said he hadn't taken exams, but most of us probably have taken an exam here at this point. In terms of the formats, generally there are some exceptions to these. So the fundamentals exams, the actual exam time is 45 minutes. You will see a lot of things saying it's 60, you get 15 minutes of prep time basically before the exam and afterwards for feedback and so on. But the actual exam itself, for the fundamentals, I think for all of them, correct me if I'm wrong, Matthew, but I think it is 45 minutes.
Spot on. Fundamentals is, I think they say the appointment is like 75 minutes long for the check-in, but the exam itself is 45 on the button. Yeah.
And the fundamentals, I think any I've done is just multiple choice. There's no case studies or drag and drops, or certainly no labs. It's literally just multiple choice. Pick the answer from 4 options kind of thing. So it's probably it is the most basic level exam you can get, but it's meant to be rapid fire. You will get anywhere between 40 and 60 questions. So if you've got 45 minutes and you get 50 questions, as you can imagine, that's more than one answer per minute. So you don't really have time to be thinking about it. The idea of the fundamentals is you know it or you don't. There's no penalties for wrong answers, of course. If you pick an answer and it's wrong, you don't get penalized. So it's always worth choosing some answer, give it your best guess. The non-fundamentals exams, most of them are 2 hours. Again, the actual exam time is 2 hours. But these are more intensive. So Matthew, do you want to talk about some of the other options here?
So I'm delighted to see Microsoft are bringing back labs into the exams. They hit it nicely with the SC100 recently from people I've spoken to. So labs are back for good, and they're going to start back in the Pearson VUE centers, and then they're going to move on to online on-view systems. So labs, as Alan said, you calculate the time wrong per question, and you could end up throwing your whole exam. So just with the associate and expert level, you're going to kind of need to know your content, your understanding of Azure. You're going to need to rapidly move through Azure, creating resources, all the different things you're going to be doing. You're just going to need to understand it. So for labs, for associate and expert level certification. Be prepared to be tested on those kind of things. As Alan said, multiple choice, labs, simulations, quick fire questions, case studies. It has it all in there. Yeah.
Just about the case studies, I found they sometimes come at the very start of the exam or sometimes at the very end. I don't know if it's randomized or what way they do it. I always prefer to have the case studies early on because they do require more focus and they can take some time. So you don't want to be, if you happen to be running low on time, you don't really want your case studies at the end because you could be struggling. There's a lot of information to take in those and you could be really struggling for time. But does anyone know, I presume it is randomized or?
Well, I've seen them in both, at the very start and at the very end. And you hate to see them at the very end, especially if you're struggling for time, because you're like, oh my goodness, because there's so much information to take in, and you have to weed out the wordy nonsense that is there to distract you.
And a lot of it is just irrelevant information, but you have to know, I don't need to know this, ignore that. Yeah.
And that really frustrates me. Even from now, it was many years ago since I was doing exams in school. No jokes about how old I am, Chris, if you're still on. But we were always warned when we were doing exams in school to watch out for wording, because exam vendors, even at that level, like to try and trip you up with wording or strangely worded questions. And I found that in Microsoft and Cisco exams as well, the questions are oddly worded on occasion just to try and throw you, and that really irritates me. There's no need for it. But
yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
And you also see the hotspot questions at the end of the exam where you've got the three questions and 3 answers, and is this correct and does this match?
And I will add to that, Michael, that is the killer, because you could get 4 questions in a row and
does this meet the requirements?
And you said, sugar, I clicked the wrong one, and you're like, I can't go back.
And you can't go back, and then the score of 690 comes up on the screen.
Oh, depressing.
They do say that sometimes there's more than one correct answer, but I'm not sure I've ever actually seen that. I don't know if they just say that I don't know.
I have. Yeah, I have. Yeah, I've seen more than one correct answer on those, but yeah, they're like I agree with you there. Like, you want your case study early and you want to get to the end of the question so that you can do your review, but then all of a sudden, and you might get 2 sets of them. The most I've ever had, I've had 3 sets of them on one exam. Those hotspots, and it's not nice.
You know what's annoying in those questions as well is when they're talking about least admin effort, because there might be multiple valid solutions, but when they throw that least admin effort in there, then you're like,
Another thing I hate is the list ones. So there's ones where you've got to build a list of maybe 4 or 5, maybe more items, and you have to put them in the correct order. And in some cases, it's like, it doesn't really matter if you do this one before that one. It's still going to work. There's no right or wrong answer, really. And you're just kind of going, well, I know this order is correct, but technically you could do this one before that one, and it's not going to affect anything. I've seen a few like that as well, and it really bothers me. Because again, if it's not what they have, you're not going to get the points for those. You get a point for each one that's in the correct place in the correct order, I think. I've seen a few like that now. Okay, that's the exam format. In terms of the actual test options, again, familiar with that, you can go to a test center or you can take it from home if you like through a proctored exam. I thought we might talk for a minute or two about pros and cons of each. I think I've definitely done both. I, again, happen to live very close by to an exam center. So my personal preference is I like to go to that exam center, one, because it's convenient for me, but I just like that it's, it's kind of a safe space. I'm not going to have someone walk in on me. I don't have to have a webcam in front of me with someone watching me the whole time. I just feel I can kind of switch off and focus just on the exam there, and it's nice and quiet and so on. Whereas I find the proctored exams kind of a little bit intrusive, the fact you have to kind of scan your room and you know that they're watching you the whole time. And of course, we've all heard the stories about those proctors, and some of them can be extremely fussy and even intrusive. Carl, I think I've seen a few tweets from you about getting given out for touching your your face or scratching yourself.
I was about to say. So when I'm nervous, I'm very much touching my face or going like that, and they don't like it, won't have it.
Yeah, I've had that, Carl. I've been told off for coughing.
Yeah,
covering my mouth when coughing.
And I've a really bad habit of reading stuff and mouthing along as I'm reading it, just to try and
I do that too.
help me think. And
Yeah.
I've been told off. I mean, generally, I've had really good experiences with the online proctoring. I mean, it's been a few years since I've done an exam center exam, so yeah, I've had really good experiences in general. But yes, some of them can be very, very fussy.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating, especially if you have nervous disposition where you're touching your face or there's no accounting for. I mean, I'm hardly sending. You've seen pictures of my room. I mean, I can touch the wall here and here. Who am I sending hand signals to?
I must admit, the online exams have been a game changer for me because it's 50 miles to the nearest exam centre. So effectively, I wouldn't be doing exams.
No, and I think in the north here as well, there used to be a couple of exam centres in Belfast, but I think most of them have now disappeared. And there's one that's an hour and a half's drive for me. It's not happening. So, it'd be quicker driving to Dublin and going to the one that Alan goes to than,
I actually had that recently. Yeah. ISC Squared, they do all their exams in person. You can't do them online. So, yeah, the exam centre seems to be a popular spot in Dublin. Yeah.
Has anyone had any issues with the waiting for proctors? I've heard of people saying they've had an exam scheduled for a particular time, but they've had to wait 45 minutes, an hour for the proctor to be available.
With my SC 900, I waited. It must have been about 40 or 45 minutes. For a proctor. And I mean that was a fundamentals exam, for goodness sake. So I don't know what was going on there, but I was waiting, and mostly it's been quite quick for me in my experience, but that was going from 5-10 minutes at worst to 40-45 minutes was like, and your camera's on, so you're not quite, the camera's on and it's just told you, break the rules at this point and you're done. So, I mean, you're sitting there for 45 minutes on camera, not quite knowing what you're allowed to do.
Yeah, that's true, Carol. Because I'll just add something in. I think to be fair to Pearson, and they've got a lot of stick over the last 2 years for it. What I've seen, because I actually have a spare room in my house. It's just a room. It's white. It has a bed in it and a table and a chair, nothing else. What I find is if you're in a room that has no access to get out except for the door behind you and your table is in front of you and there's no windows, you're pretty good in terms of they kind of just let you in immediately once you go through the verification checks. They're very fast. I will give it to them on that.
So that sounds like what you're telling me I need is a prison cell.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, did you hear the story? Was it Tim Warner? I think used to take them in his bathroom because again, it was quiet and enclosed. But he got told one day, "You can't take your test in here."
I remember him tweeting about that. It's funny.
I thought that was funny.
I remember that.
Why not? I think they were afraid something might happen.
Mine's always the kitchen because they don't do it on my desk. I've had to in the past. They wanted me to show. I had one proctor who asked me to unplug all my monitors, my dock, everything.
Yeah. Do that.
And it just basically take my desk apart so I can do an exam. So it's easier to do it downstairs.
Funny you say that. When I worked for Outsource in the north now, so that's 3 or 4 years ago at this stage, I was doing an online proctored exam for Microsoft. Might have been one of the old Office 365 exams, but anyway, I was sitting on a machine in a training room, a big enough training room by myself, and this proctor made me scan the room and then made me get up on top of a desk to unplug a projector on the ceiling And then I had to struggle with the camera to show them that I had actually unplugged the kettle lead from the projector. I was like,
Yeah.
no.
Well, the problem I had was my camera was all linked into my dock.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than using a laptop, I was trying to use a big screen, curved screen. And then they're like, oh, can you spin your camera around? Well, it's on a mount. I was like, no.
Yeah.
No, I can't.
Oh God, yeah, it's funny. Everyone definitely seems to have a story and a proctor. But yes, I'd say the few times I have chosen to do that, I've actually had pretty good experiences. So I mean, I definitely wouldn't knock it. But yeah, because I have the choice of convenience, I prefer the exam center. It's the same cost anyway, which brings me on to the cost of the exams. So they're pretty much all the same price, apart from the fundamentals. The fundamentals are €99, and then all the other exams, I believe, at least I haven't seen anything else, are 165. So they're not the cheapest. And there was a point earlier about who should pay for these. I've always had my employers pay for these. Again, the benefits are for your employers as well, so they definitely should be funding this. In terms of training courses and things, that might be a different matter. Generally, I've been told you'll have to study for this in your own time. But certainly the exams themselves, your employer should be covering the cost.
And it depends on the size of the company you're working for as well, because some companies have access to that enterprise skills initiative thing as well, where a lot of the exams will be covered through that partnership as well. So, if you're not sure, ask.
Absolutely.
Talk to your colleagues, or talk to your line manager, or whoever's in charge of making sure that those specialisms are met at the end of the year, so they will know. And
I'll even go one step further. Literally go to esi.microsoft.com
and try to log in.
Work email address, and if it signs in, because there's a lot of employers that don't know that they've been enrolled onto the program. And
that's a really good tip.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
Yeah, I'd actually completely forgotten about that. I had seen it previously, and at the time my organization was not enrolled, but it's something I'd completely forgotten about actually. So
it's really handy because they have an integration now with MeasureUp, so you can do your practice tests in there as well, which is really, really good. So worth trying, as Charlie says.
Very good. There are some options for discounts. So if you are low on funds, or your employer is not helping you, there are ways you can get discounts or free exams. And I'm sure most of us have done these cloud skills challenges over the years. It seems to be a fairly recurring theme with Microsoft now. They've kind of kept these going for some time. So this is a cloud skills challenge where you complete some of the Microsoft Learn training modules, and at the end of that, your challenge is to complete a set number of modules in the series. And if you do so, you get a free exam voucher. Usually the vouchers only cover certain exams, so you can't use it for any old exam, but it will tell you at the start which ones would be covered in that.
And of course, you have your beta, exams. You can be like me, who took their solutions architect in beta and discovered you passed it 7 months later. And you took it for free. So why not do a beta exam? It's always worth doing. You learn something new, and you just put yourself on suspense for 6 months.
It's the wait for me. Yeah. Does anybody remember me after I did the AZ700 exam in beta? It was not a pleasant wait. It was not good.
And of course you have your training days, which are done usually by the beautiful Lorraine Lawrence, who a lot of people will know her. She's a Microsoft product manager, and of course Christian Vegra, who is also a product manager for Microsoft. There are two great ways to get discounts.
Yeah, I think betas are good for, especially if you've done some exams already. And again, it's a brand new exam, so it's Microsoft kind of testing the water. What they do is they want to see how well people score. Have they made the exam too easy, too hard? They look for feedback on that. It's sometimes free, sometimes heavily discounted, like 70-80% off kind of thing. But yes, you will have a long wait for your results. Unlike the other exams where you get your result instantly, you could be waiting several months for your results for the betas. But I would recommend them for people who set exams previously and you want to kind of try something new that's just been released. The last one, just the partner discounts. Just again, if you're in the partner program, speak to your employer about it, speak to your distributor. There's often discounts. Microsoft often have free vouchers there, so they can be made available if it's something of interest. So there's often ways to get these. Because what a lot of people are afraid of, well, they might ask their employer to pay for the exam. They're worried, if I don't pass the exam, do I have to ask my employer again? Can I sit it again? Will you pay for it the second time? So again, getting a voucher to do it free, you basically get a free shot at it if you don't pass it. No harm.
It used to be, and I haven't asked recently, but for a while last year, the local Microsoft org were giving vouchers out to user groups to distribute there as well. So worth getting involved in the community for a quick plug, because you never know what might be available.
It's one of the few things you'll get out of Microsoft at the moment. With all their budget restrictions, the one thing they will actually give you is free exam vouchers. Now they are keeping a tighter control in this year, because we saw some problems last year where loads of vouchers were given out and no one even sat the exams, so they went to waste. They just expired. So as long as they're used, Microsoft are usually happy to give them out, and I know they are still doing that at the moment.
Yeah, and just a reminder, if you're a student and you're in a university or a FIT course, or you're on an ETB course or something, you are entitled to 100% off fundamental vouchers. So as long as you get registered with Microsoft as a student, you're entitled to them. So that's why it's worth doing your fundamentals, just to get a guide as to what they're like and how to get involved and get into it, just for anyone starting off.
Yeah, and just a quick one about the renewal process. So in the past, when you sat an exam, it lasted for 2 years. Then you had to sit the full exam again and pay the full price, basically do the whole thing all over again and repeat that every 2 years. So Microsoft changed this a few years ago. So the renewal process now, the exams only last for 1 year, so they do expire after 12 months. But rather than having to resit the exam and pay for the exam again, you can just do a free online assessment. Those become available 6 months before the expiry date. You should get an email reminder. Sit the renewal. Once you pass it, your 12 months is added on to your expiry date.
Yeah, make your life easy.
Yeah, so I think most feedback on this has been very positive. Most people are really happy with it. It's fairly quick and easy. You get multiple attempts. If you do fail the exam, you can just keep repeating it. I think it's maybe once per day, but you can just keep resitting it until you do pass it. So just don't forget to do your renewals. Feedback, guys, what do you think on these? I've seen mixed. I found some of these, especially the early days, were extremely easy. Like the questions were very basic. They've definitely gotten tougher, I think.
My first round of renewals, some of them were, they were very, very easy, and the pass rate was very, very low. Now I haven't come around to, or the pass level, what you had to get to pass, was quite low, like below 60% or something. I think I remember, but I'm due actually in the next month or two this year's round of renewals, so it'll be interesting to see if the pass mark is the same or if they're any more difficult. I mean, I like the idea of the way they're doing it, this continuous learning model, and not like other vendors do it, where you have to earn these, like is it CompTIA and Cisco do the continuing education credits that you have to earn through paying for courses or attending courses and seminars and stuff like that. So this is a really good way to do it from Microsoft, and it doesn't cost us any more money. I just like to see them probably even though they're open book, probably be a wee bit more difficult, so that it forces you to go and read up and make sure that you're up to date on the subject matter.
Yeah, I think a lot of the questions are very, if I type this into Google, I'll get the answer. I definitely noticed them getting a bit tougher, at least some of them. And the other thing I noticed as well is they are now focusing on newer features that have come out. They're trying to include those in the renewal materials. So they're not going to ask you stuff that's been out for a while. If some new features come out and it's GA, they seem to be trying to include those in the renewal content as well. So yeah, it's made the process easier, but it's made people more likely to go off and get multiple certifications, because the old way, if you had 10 exams, you didn't want to have to be repeating 10 exams every 2 years and paying for all of those. But this would encourage people to go and take more and more Microsoft exams.
I mean, what do you think? I mean, Matthew, I know you're heavily involved with CompTIA and things like that. So what do you think about the way CompTIA and Cisco do it with the continual? Is it the CE credits or the whatever CE plus? I think CompTIA call it, don't they?
Yes. Yep.
And then you have to pay. I think the CompTIA used to have to pay a fee every year to be able to do that.
So it's like with CompTIA, and it's GA knowledge here that I'm going to say. Like with CompTIA, you have to pay $150 every 3 years, and earn CE credits. But if you're one of the higher level CompTIA holders, it's a bit of a job now, to be honest. Like CASP or Pentest or CISA, any of those, you're earning 60, 75 credits. And as you say, Carl, you have to go off and nearly buy another course or go off and do like something like your CISP or something. And it's just so much pressure. You have 3 years to do it, but it's a lot of pressure to get in 3 years, because that course is going to cost you $400 or $500 on top of the renewal cost.
So just with Cisco, because I was looking at figuring out how to renew my CCNA with CE credits, but it's not going to happen. You're doing Cisco courses, you're setting other Cisco exams to renew the other ones that you have. With CompTIA, can you set other vendor certifications to contribute to continuing education?
Yeah, so you can do one or two things. You can, if you have, let's just say your baseline is Security Plus and you've everything below that, you either sit the new Security Plus exam or you do a Cert Master, which is CompTIA's course. Or else you can go and use maybe one of your Microsoft certification towards your CE requirements. But for higher level ones, like you say, Carol, you have to literally go off and do like your CISP or your CCSP or your ECH. You have to go off and spend hundreds to renew the more costly CEU ones.
Yeah, I mean, A+ was my first ever exam, and I, to be honest, let it expire. But there's plenty of scope in the vendor neutral CompTIA exams, even nowadays, because I keep an eye on them. I don't do any of them because I'm primarily focused on Azure most of the time. But I in contrast, Microsoft's continuous education slant, or the way they're doing it, I mean, they're not charging any money for it, so I mean that's the biggest bonus, But
and I think that is one of the best things I've seen any company do with certification. But I'm sure everyone here would say that make them a bit more difficult, at least. Not something that you can Google.
Someone in the chat said to throw labs into it. Who was that? Throw labs into the renewals. Yeah, bring it on.
That would be good. Yeah.
The labs exist in Microsoft Learn, so
they have the sandboxes. Yeah.
Left out the hand holding and throw go and set a lab or two to pass your exam. Or to pass your renewal. Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, can't get Google to do the lab for you, so I think that's a good idea as well. Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Unfortunately, it was Richard Hooper that had that idea, but give it to him anyway.
Okay, so just a couple more slides, just the resources available. And again, I think if you ask anyone nowadays, they always say Microsoft Learn. I think Microsoft have done actually a really good job with Microsoft Learn. There's so much information there, and they do put a lot of time into keeping it up to date. I can't vouch for every single section of it, but generally I found it really useful, and it is aligned with the certification as well, so it'll always direct you to the appropriate Learn path, and there's a huge amount of information in there if you read through it all. Has anyone noticed there are now some official exam practice assessments available? So you go into the actual exam page, I know Azure Fundamentals has it, I think the AZ104 has it as well. There is actually an exam assessment, so it'll give you 50 questions, and they're proper exam format questions in an exam simulator. So these have started to become available the last few weeks. I would imagine they will become available for all exams, but at the moment they're just for a few of the certificates at the moment. So that's definitely a useful tool for anyone looking to sit these exams. We mentioned MeasureUp already. So again, MeasureUp are Microsoft's official partner, I suppose. Now these are fee-based practice tests. But again, yeah, let's. What's that link again? ESI.microsoft.com, was it?
Yeah, ESI Enterprise Skills Initiative. ESI.microsoft.com.
Right. Anyone had any or found any good third-party online courses or practice tests that they would vouch for? There are many of them out there. Anyone use those or recommend any?
First person to mention any brain dumps gets removed.
Yeah. Some of those are definitely known for having actual exam questions.
Yeah.
Like again, I think the concept is fine as long as they are original materials and they're kind of on line with the subject matter, I suppose. It's a good way to challenge yourself and see, do you actually test yourself to see, do you actually know the content?
Yeah, I actually, someone said WizLabs, and that's about the fourth time I think I've heard WizLabs now. Yeah, they're supposed to be really good.
Yeah, but some of these sites, it's remarkable how close they are to some of the questions you get. So that, I mean, it's a bit scary for me, some of those.
You have to be careful. I suppose you have to use your own judgment. And as you said, Carol, like anybody using the other type of sites, it's going to burn you in the long run.
It's not just going to burn you, it's going to burn us all, you know, because yes, we're 10 minutes over time, so I'm not going to get in my soapbox. Start me on that one at the start, at the top of an hour, you know. But you're not just impacting yourself, or you're cheapening the industry.
Yeah.
Which you know, just I'm not going to get in my soapbox. I'll just say you're cheapening the industry if you're using brain dumps, and you just become paper qualified then, because when you get into the actual having to do stuff, you'll crumple, and nobody likes a paper engineer. Sorry, right? I'll stop now.
No, it's a very valid point, and I mean I've tried some of those sites myself, and I found the same. Some of the questions I've actually seen come up are very, very close to them, as you said. But I've often found as well some of the answers given are just wrong.
Yes,
very wrong sometimes. So you cannot definitely rely on them. But again, you're just memorizing answers. You're not actually learning the material. So even if you pass the exam, you're not really qualified to do the job. Really, an exam should be a way to validate your skills and your knowledge, that you actually know what you're talking about and able to do it, rather than just learning off materials.
And I think the labs thing will help with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that
you can't brain dump a lab, folks.
Exactly.
I think one of the best things Microsoft did was with Microsoft Learn, they did an XP score, and that goes up every time you do training on Microsoft Learn. And in that, you have more XP points for labs than you would have for just basic questions. So that's a good way. You see a lot of MVPs and MCTs, and you know, all Microsoft professionals getting heavily focused on the labs. They go off and do them in Microsoft Learn, and you get your experience points. And you also build up a official record on Microsoft's site to show that you participated in some of these labs. So it's a good way. Yeah.
I think your labs on the exam should move it to make it half of the exam, because that would get rid of all the brain 100%. Dumps and all that sort of stuff, because it shows that you've got the knowledge. And when you talk about those sort of sites, and I'd agree with you on that. I think, Alan, you said it. I've looked at WizLabs, even MeasureUp to a certain extent. It's very, you can memorize, you have to ask the question in a certain way. And I think MeasureUp are trying to ask the questions in a certain way that's going to match up to the exam. But then you could argue to that point then that you're memorizing how the question is asked in order to make sure you get the right answer. Whereas I find sometimes, and I think it was Derek Smith said this to me before, that the best way to approach an exam is like, if you want to get certified, have a crack at the exam first. Without, see how you react to the questions that are given in the exam, and see if, because as you said, with the exams, they're, what I find with them, you've got your 4 possible answers sometimes, and 2 of them are obviously crap, and then there's a very, very thin line between the other 2 and what's right and what's wrong. So, and I think labs would just do away with all of that rubbish if you're a pure practical exam.
Like, I'm going to be rude here and just say it. CompTIA have labs in their exams, and like, I sat my pen test exam on Sunday. There's no way you would be able to pass that exam if you didn't have a lab or simulation in it. Like, if you didn't understand how to do what they were asking you to do on Kali Linux, let's just say that was it. You wouldn't know how to do that unless you practice it.
And while you're talking about labs, not just Portal Adventures, you're doing no one any favors in an exam, and it may make it a lot tougher if you take Portal Adventures out of it. But if you're clicking around the portal, fine for 1 lab, maybe 2 labs in an exam, but bring out the scripted stuff, bring out the PowerShell, bring out the Azure CLI, heck, bring out the pipelines and the YAML, just stuff that will enable you to make you a better engineer, because you have to go and think about this stuff. Make the labs not just Portal Adventures if you're going to go that far.
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing, and this is the controversy, Carl, that you were looking for here, right? I think to a certain extent, right, and again, I'm not going to get up on a soapbox about this, right? We can, my DMs are open. Anyone's free to talk to me about this. I think that the quality of the exams has been slightly diluted, because let's take the enterprise admin expert for a minute. They're putting that into 2 exams, they're putting that into 1 exam from 2. They've done the same with Azure Solutions Architect. So therefore, they've half the content effectively and half the challenge of it, okay? So is that making it easier to pass exams, and is that diluting the quality of exams? Possibly it is. If you brought labs, and as you said, Carl, let's bring, Azure Cloud Shell, let's bring PowerShell, let's bring, because it is very easy, and you'll get around it in the portal if you're not 100% sure. But if you bring that into it, that will automatically increase your exam quality, and it'll increase your learners as well.
Yeah, and before somebody accuses me of being elitist or snobby or anything, doing stuff in the portal in the cloud is fine, okay? But you're doing these exams to better yourself as an engineer, to better yourself as a cloud engineer or a cloud architect or whatever it is. The way to do that is to challenge yourself by doing it in a scripted, automated fashion. Richard says, friends, don't let friends click in the portal for prod. Yeah, that's funny. But just to come back, I know we're pushing on time and the boys still have 5 slides to go, but just to come back to what you said there, Michael, for the solutions architect in particular, I don't disagree with most of what you said about the diluting the exams, but for the solution architect, effectively you were sitting the AZ 104 twice in the previous way it was done, because which one was the technologies exam? Whichever one was the technology.
The 300, I think,
or the 303 or whatever it was when I did it. But effectively, you were sitting the AZ 104 twice with a little more depth in it the second time around, and then the 304, as it was for me, was a bit more soft and a bit more, pre-salesy almost. So perhaps they've just closed that gap a little bit where you were almost sitting the two of the exact same exam.
I get that, but I suppose my point of it is, and Matthew touched on it briefly earlier, was around how in-depth these exams go. And I'll prove my age now. My first MCSE was on Windows Server 2000, right? And that was 7 exams, and that was an absolute beast. because you had to know your stuff inside out, in depth, and you, as Alan said, you can bypass the fundamentals. You now need 2 exams to be an Azure Solutions Architect.
Yeah. Well,
there's something wrong with that in the current format, and that's why I'd go for labs, right? To kind of close that gap. And absolutely agree with Richard. Yeah, the portal is, and
it's fine because
it's fine, but it's not fine either.
It's probably fine for the fundamentals and some of the administrator stuff.
But it's not fine for the advanced.
No, see, when you're getting to the DevOps administrator, I've just made up an exam. The DevOps expert and the architect expert and the cybersecurity expert. I'm sorry, but if I'm employing you with those exams, I expect you to be able to break out at least one infrastructure as code language and at least one scripting language. PowerShell, Azure CLI. It's just a must for me, at the advanced stages. So, Michael, maybe
okay, Carl, we'll talk tomorrow. Let's get off our box now and let the lads finish up. We'll chat you in the morning.
This is good. I'd say it's really interesting, and I agree with most of those points as well.
We're gonna have to have a part 2 of this on.
Yeah, well, luckily, most of our slides, we have only 2 proper slides really that most of us can wrap up then. But let's finish off. This was just a link really to a PDF guide. So someone asked earlier, Carl, we will definitely make the slides available. So there are some nice links in here. This is a PDF guide that kind of gives you everything you need, pathway to certification. So we won't look at it now because we're short on time. But just to finish.
If you don't mind throwing the slides up to GitHub and throw a link at me, I'll put it in the meetup page then.
Perfect. Do that.
Awesome.
So
thank you.
Just read the finish then. Myself and Matthew came for our top 3 tips really. So Matthew, you want to give yours?
So obviously top 3 tips 10 years later in IT, master the basics. Remember them, learn them, use them, practice them, and rinse and repeat with that. Industry experience will keep you humble in every position you take up in IT. Gain as much as you can from people who are older, wiser, longer in the business, and take everything they say as constructive criticism and use that to your advantage. And most importantly, grow your knowledge. Every day you're learning, and every day, I say it on LinkedIn, it's a journey to the cloud. So do that. Start your journey, get on with it, enjoy it, learn from everybody, and hopefully that'll make you a better engineer or architect or cybersecurity person. So
Okay, and my own ones, my top 3 tips would be learn by doing. So as mentioned, I started using Azure in 2015, but didn't do my first exam till 2019. I think it was 2019. But at that stage, I built up a lot of experience. I've been using Azure for deployments for several years. I had a lot of experience built up, and I learned that way. So get your lab environments, set up your Azure trial accounts, get Visual Studio subscriptions from your employer, get your sandbox environments. There are ways you can get access to Azure without having to pay for it, and use it, deploy it, read up on the various services and things in Microsoft Learn, but actually go out and get hands-on. It's really the only way to fully understand it. You can read as much as you like, but you won't fully understand how it works until you actually get deploying it. So learn by actually doing it. Focus on your weaknesses. So if you're taking a particular exam, focus on the bits you don't know well. The bits you do know well, don't worry too much about it. You're only going to have certain portions of the exam weighted towards that. Focus on the bits that you know little about and upscale on those areas. Cover off the bits that you're missing, the gaps in your knowledge there. And then the last one is set your exam date early and then stick to it. So when you're planning to sit an exam, pick a date. It can be a month's time, 2 months' time, and actually lock in that exam. You can change that date if you need to, but actually have it in the calendar so it's a goal to work towards, because otherwise you keep putting it off. We put people through a 4-day AZ 104 course about a year ago, and many people never sat the exam. One person came to sit it like literally about 12 months later. We'd given them an exam voucher. It had expired like 6 months ago, but they'd waited a full year to sit the exam. There's no point in doing that. If you do an intensive course, 4 or 5 day course, you want to be sitting the exam in within 2 weeks of that, in my experience, because you will start to forget everything you've learned very quickly unless you're actually doing it on a daily basis. So get that exam date in and stick to the date, get it done. My advice there.
Yeah.
That's us. That's us, guys. Matthew mentioned his event. I'll let him talk about this, just if anyone's interested.
So yeah, if anyone's interested, it's securing Azure infrastructure. It's more like this. It's going to be tabletop exercises split up between 2 different rooms in Microsoft Garage in Microsoft in Dublin. The link is at the bottom of the slide here. Again, we'll share these out to everyone. It's up on Eventbrite. You can get registered. Limited number that can come to it. So the more people register, the quicker it fills out. It's the 28th of April 23, and it's basically a full day session with different speakers. I just want to give one shout out and say a huge thank you to Microsoft Ireland and of course Claire Smith, who is the RD manager for the MVPs in Ireland and the UK. So a huge shout out to her for supporting the event at Microsoft, and obviously the MVPs here on this event who invited both myself and Alan. Really appreciate it, and always happy to help where we can.
No problems. Good to have you, boys. Lads, Matthew, send me the link and some details to that if you need numbers, and I'll promote it inside Avanade Ireland.
Thanks a million, Carl.
I'll drop the links into our Irish chat and see if, might as well get some enthusiasts in there as well. So, yep, all good. Send me the links.
Awesome. And that's it, Alan, isn't it?
That's us done. Yeah, thanks, guys, for organising this session. Just something we should have done way sooner, guys. But look, I'd definitely be interested in doing another session for you guys in the future. Something a bit more technical next time, maybe.
Hey, doors are always open, especially for local MVPs. It's great. I'd like to look towards maybe later on, the second half of the year, doing some sort of hybrid events as well. I know the name on the door says Limerick .NET-Azure user group. But I'm nowhere near Limerick, and these days neither is Sackledeep. So we need to get some hybrid events going. Matthew, maybe we'll give you a shout on that front because you're a Limerick lad, aren't you?
Yeah, and I'd be delighted to help. Honestly,
so
thanks.
It'll be I'll Sackledeep and I'll send you a message offline, and we'll see if we can plan something for the latter half of the year. I'll even drive down for it, But folks, thanks for joining. Matthew, Alan, great talk, great discussion.